Actually, we have had because we are patent attorneys, we have also had the good fortune of filing patents, I think, for Dr. Indumati and prominent women scientists of IIT like Dr. Anju Chadha and Dr. Smita. So when we look at the work that's being put forward by women scientists, we can very certainly say that any form of discrimination on the basis of either gender or on qualifications or any type of socio-psychological issues, structural issues is completely unwarranted. In fact, I think the women of IIT have been principally responsible for many of the different inventions that come out. And I am seeing a particularly good trend in biotechnology and other engineering services where women scientists and women engineers and researchers are making good headway. So as a lawyer, I can tell you that, and coming from a completely different field in particular, we talk all the time about rights, but I can tell you with a great degree of confidence that we have also similar problems. Women do have to face discrimination as lawyers, as judges, as registrars and officials of the courts in India, and definitely as clients. A lot of women who work in the court system as clerks, and we do have quite a big, what can be called an unorganized sector within the legal system. So these people are contract labor as well as, I don't know if you've ever had the chance of visiting a lawyer's office, you will find a person called a law clerk. Now, this law clerk is a person who probably understands more about filing and more about documentation than many lawyers. And many juniors are actually put as apprentices to the office clerk before they graduate to become junior associates or junior lawyers. There is a big discrimination that women clerks face in this field. So our court, the Madras High Court, has actually initiated the Internal Complaints Committee. We have a functional committee that operates for all grades of persons entering the High Court, from judges to class 4 employees, but also for clients. I think interestingly, they've also opened out the ICC to men and transgender persons who are complaining of sexual harassment. So to say that, a group like ours as lawyers, that we are just aware of the law, therefore we follow the law, appears to be a big myth. Because if that were so, then there should be no discrimination in our field against women. But as we know, it is there. So I have maybe 45 minutes to speak to you. And there are too many issues to discuss. As Dr. Indumati was mentioning, we did chat about what might be a good area to discuss. And we felt that rights of women at the workplace, in the community, at home, and also in other places where they receive services is all threatened and risked by discrimination. A very interesting case that I actually filed this case as a PIL in Hyderabad had to do with the murder of a person, a veterinarian, a woman who was murdered who was abducted from a toll plaza in Hyderabad in early 2019, I think, and November 2019. And she was abducted, later assaulted, probably raped, and then murdered. And then they attempted to dispose of the evidence by trying to burn the body. Now, if you look at this, we cannot say that only women will become victims of opportunistic crimes, but it does appear that it is the large number of victims happen to be women and girls, whether we like it or not. So when we filed this case at the High Court, one of the questions they asked was, why have we included sexual harassment clauses here? Why is it that a toll plaza murder has to have sexual harassment evidence? And what we put forward was that a toll plaza was a place of work, and a woman going to or coming from work is likely to encounter toll plazas and National Highway Authority offices and National Highway Authority premises whenever they are on the road. So it is not that a woman, once she comes out of the office, has to be at her home instantly. She needs to traverse into the community, and in the places where she is traversing, there also she needs to have safety. There also she needs to be comfortable. Sad to say, the case is still not come up for its second hearing, because out of the 8 respondents, only 6 have responded. The concessionaire, the person who is actually holding the concession for collecting the toll at that particular toll plaza, has not responded. So therefore, we are still waiting. But let's hope that something good will come of it. What is interesting in all of this, that I am particularly interested in, is that the law is unfortunately on the spot only after an incident has occurred. So prior to the incident occurring, there are very few laws that tell us what to do. Let me ask you like this, or maybe make you think like this. We know what are the prohibited behaviors under the Sexual Harassment Act or under Domestic Violence Act or any of the gender violence related acts. We know what are the prohibited behaviors, but we don't know what are the authorized behaviors. For instance, the prohibited behavior in domestic violence is that you shall not abuse a woman verbally or physically or sexually, and you will not, under the IPC, you will not outrage her modesty or demonstrate her in an obscene way. Yes, but how do you do the respectful behavior? How do you demonstrate respectful behavior to a woman? Or how do you treat her in a decent way instead of abusing her? How do you approach a woman without being abusive? So these are not to be found in the law. The law does not tell us how these are to be achieved. One reason is because the law tries to set a minimum standard, and the law also tells us how to punish a person who's crossing the line. So the punishment and the minimum standard are supposed to help us negotiate and move to the positive standards. I just would like to share my screen. Okay, great. I'm able to share my screen. So let me run through some data very quickly, and then we will see where to go from there. If you see, in most of the countries, there is some gender disparity. But if you see in most of the developed European states, maybe liberal democratic states and so on, there appears to be a very manageable discrimination in pay cuts and in employment. So you see, for instance, Norway has 86% of women, and they receive 86% of the remuneration that men get. So if men get 100 rupees, women get 86 rupees in Norway. In Austria, if men get 100 rupees, they get 67 rupees. And this gender balance or imbalance is caused due to various reasons. Unfortunately, most of us as women don't face just one discrimination. It's not just gender. Often it is gender plus religion, gender plus disability, gender plus age, or gender plus sexual orientation, or more of them. It can be gender, race, and ethnicity and religion. So it's very difficult to say whether we are being discriminated against only because of our gender or because of other concomitant facts as well. And how does this impact us in general? Maybe this is not so in government service, but in many other services, particularly in the unorganized sector and also in the professional sector, meaning sectors like ours, like as lawyers, doctors, independent engineers, chartered accountants, and so on. There are very many opportunities that are lost because we are women. We lose in terms of earnings, we lose in terms of occupational advancement, career development. We lose certain sectors. For instance, when I decided to become a lawyer, one of the first questions that people or friends and relatives ask is, what will you do if a person who has perpetrated rape or alleged to have perpetrated rape comes to you as a client? Will you take up the case? So there are sectors in which women lawyers are supposed to do well. So we are supposed to do very well in matrimonial law, for instance, or child custody, right? But not so well in science and technology. So if you see the vast majority of IPR lawyers, intellectual property lawyers, will be men. The vast majority of firms dealing with science and technology will be men. Arms Act, Ammunitions Act, Mines Act, armed forces, the larger corporate sectors, all these people will prefer to work with either firms which are led by men or with men lawyers. There are also, these also definitely impact our progress and advancement. There are many arguments as to why women should not be discriminated against. Yeah, at least theoretically, we are able to say that women should not be discriminated against because we are half the population of the world. So if you discriminate against women, then you lose half the population of the world. Or if you are decide that a woman customer is less important than a male customer, then you use a customer base, right? So it's very interesting points come out when you try to argue what are the legal cases or what are the business cases that can be advanced towards equality. There are also good corporate examples that say that if you have more than 5% women in the senior management of a corporate industry, then that industry or that company does well than a company that has no diversity in the top management. Why this is so has been dealt with by many people. They talk about the multitasking ability of women also as a part of this. But yes, so the fact is, or data shows that these advantages exist. But in India, the case is completely biased. So it's very difficult to find good data in India primarily. But even when we do find data, it's very disheartening. For instance, as late as February 2021, the total percentage of urban Indian women who are working is only 7%. In fact, in an earlier paper that came out of the World Bank, supported by the ILO in 2018, they said that women are less likely to take paying jobs as the family income rises and as the educational level of women rises. So that means that the vast majority of women in the workforce will be women coming from the less privileged, economically privileged backgrounds and with lesser education, which instantly biases the system against them structurally. So lesser educated women are likely to be paid less. And if they are coming from an inherently underprivileged background, then it's very likely that they're likely to get exploited. India also lags in its women in the data relating to women in the workforce, even among our own neighbors. So I'm quite surprised, frankly, to see this data that we are behind Nepal. For some reason, behind Sri Lanka is understandable because in my visits to Sri Lanka, I have seen women having a much higher scope than in India. But Nepal and Bangladesh, maybe in Bangladesh also it is understandable because the vast majority of women who are employed in Bangladesh are probably in the unorganized sector. But what is even more law itself just cannot explain all of what is happening. In the last, from 2013, so the Sexual Harassment at the Workplace Act came into India in 2013. And from that period till 2019, we are seeing a rise in the cases. Now, many people will see this as a negative comment, but I would see that as a positive comment. I would say that this simply means that more people are reporting the crime. This means that more women are coming forward, and that means that they are trusting the system. Probably they are trusting the act as well to give them redressal. But unfortunately, as lawyers and being in the legal profession, we have probably let the community down. This is very common in statistics related to legal cases, pendency in sexual harassment cases is 93%, which is very bad because unfortunately, again, structurally, Indian court system is quite slow, and even a general civil case, a contract related case or an employment related case, a rent control related case, and also notoriously matrimonial cases go on for 4 to 5 to 6 years. And if you want to go right up to the Supreme Court, it could take a lifetime. So a person's career cannot be put on hold for 3 to 4 years. So many women will actually just kind of withdraw from the system after a while and look for a better job and move on. So that kind of also skews the statistics a little bit. We don't exactly know what's happening, but the Crime Records Bureau shows that in 3,074 cases, we have 44 convictions. So like I said, I don't think the legal system has done justice to the women in our workforce. I also was asked to say a little bit about other areas where women may probably look at how discrimination can be eliminated. So one of the areas that we have worked on, India as a country has worked on, is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The difference between discrimination and distinction. So there's nothing wrong in law against distinction. So if I distinguish people on the basis of age, on the basis of gender, for the purpose of granting some special rights, there's nothing wrong with that. Even rural, urban, rich, poor, distinctions in order to provide fair and equitable opportunity is not wrong. But unfair distinction based on psychological ideas, distinction based on structural or community ideas, or social gendering, those are wrong. So for instance, telling a girl when she wants to become an engineer that you can become a biotech engineer but not a civil engineer. A civil engineer has to stand in the sun and women can't stand in the sun, would be discrimination. Or telling a woman lawyer you can't do Mines and Minerals Act because it's a very serious law which is very difficult for people to understand, and I think you can't do it. Or discriminating on the basis of pay, saying that all you women, you will take leave more than men, you will come late to office more often than men, so therefore don't expect equal pay. That is discrimination. So the CEDAW gives very clear definitions on all of these different ideas and different thought processes. But most importantly, they tell the states which have signed up to the CEDAW, to the treaty, to incorporate the principles of equality of men and women in their legal system. So by law, they are supposed to remove any discrimination that is there in the legal system. And it has been done to a large extent in India. At least the law doesn't say that men and women are not equal. To establish tribunals and other public institutions to ensure protection of women against discrimination. This has been done, but in a sort of haphazard manner. Maybe a little more work has to be done. We don't have a good workplace harassment tribunal. We have to go to court, for instance. And that is one reason why many women prefer to go to the state Women's Commission or the National Commission for Women to get redressal. So establishing these tribunals would be a good idea to do work on protecting women and to ensure elimination of all acts of discrimination. This maybe it has happened because we have read in newspapers and because policy documents are issued by the government and so on. But it has not penetrated into the community, as many of you may be aware. Maybe one area where we need to do a little more work as a community and as a country is gender-based violence, which is harmful acts which are directed at an individual simply because of their gender. And here, very interestingly, there is a difference between gender and sex. So the sex of a person is more biological. So that has to do with whether they are female or male or some other third component like transgender persons. But gender is a sociological concept. And therefore, often when we discuss sexual harassment, we fail to discuss gender harassment. Let me give you an example. telling a woman that she's pretty and that you would, would probably like to marry her, and in an obscene way, would be sexual harassment, because you're expressing an interest in sexual activity with that person in an inappropriate way. But gender harassment has to do with when a man or a woman may come to a girl and say, don't smile so much. If you all girls smile so much, this is what causes the men to be distracted. Or they may tell a woman, girl, a young girl, wear a dupatta. Don't walk around without wearing a dupatta. It is this kind of activity that makes you a victim of harmful acts. This is gender harassment. And quite often in our society, gender harassment parades as good advice. Many people in our society do gender harassment, but because they are uncles and aunties, maybe even parents, because they are teachers, because they are senior professionals in our own business or career, we kind of are confused whether it's harassment or not. So it's very common, and unfortunately, very many of us girls and women, when we enter the industry as young people, are unable to see it as harassment. We actually perceive it as good advice, when actually it is meant to distinguish and discriminate against women. So here it is harmful acts that are directed at an individual based on their gender and is rooted in gender inequality. So this comes because we believe that certain genders should be controlled. Certain genders, their sexuality should be controlled. Their freedom of thought should be controlled. So therefore, when we talk about gender-based violence, we need to also think of this. As a lawyer, again, when I mentioned that the law does not tell us what is the best way to behave, the law does not teach the men how to protect themselves against harassment allegations, then we have to look elsewhere. We have to understand where to get this norm about how to behave well. Let me give you an example. This example I repeat quite often because I think it puts the story there where we want it. So it's one of the things that I do is I do youth protection activity, and in youth protection I talk to boys. Of course, I do also talk to girls, but my core area of work is with the young boys, generally from 6th standard to 12th standard. And it's very difficult to get permission from schools to address boys. It's understandable that you want to address girls, but nobody understands why you want to address boys. My answer is that the first reason is because they are the problem. The second reason is that 47% of children who are abused are boys. And the more you protect the girls, the more likely that boys will become victims. So in many countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, nearly 99% of youth abuse happens against boys. So this is a very important question to address. But every time I address boys, I get startling revelations about what is acceptable in community. And I'm talking only about Tamil Nadu, Chennai, because I don't do this activity in any other city or any other state. When I was, and generally when I go for youth protection as a lawyer, I take a person who's a psychologist, generally from SCARF, generally a male person who has worked with young people. So we went to this class and we were having this big discussion on what is privacy, what is personal space, what is procedure, what is good, what is wrong. And then this young kid, skinny young boy from 6th standard, stands up and loudly announces, "Ma'am, girls na silent arkanu, boys na violent arkanu." So, which for those who don't know Tamil means girls should be silent and boys should be violent. And there was this cheer, like, some big Rajini statement had been made, and everybody was whooping, boys were whooping. And me and my Dr. Shiv, who comes with me, both of us were like, okay, what do you do now? Where do you go from here? So, and then we, of course, did a little more interaction with them. And then we find that they receive these inputs from two places, their mother and from Vijay. So Vijay is, for those who are not from Chennai, is a actor who is very appealing to young boys who are in their 12 to 14-year age group. So So when we try to address, what about your father, your uncles, your brothers? No, there is very little input from any of them. The largest amount of input they get is from their mother and from Vijay or Ajit or whoever the current hero on the silver screen is. So with this kind of input coming from society, it's very difficult for us to decide what is good behavior and what is not. So um, um, one of the important things that we miss out in sexual harassment or even sexual rights or gender rights issues is how important standards, procedures, and guidelines are. So if you could allow me to just move back to a few slides, you can see there that in total of 76 cases, they were able to say that the cases are true, but there is insufficient evidence or untraced or no clue. Okay. So unfortunately, sexual harassment rarely happens or occurs, or even domestic violence. Okay. Of course, we have seen evidence of it on the streets. It happens in the public spaces as well. But largely, sexual harassment, gender violence, gender-based violence, or discrimination happens within a closed system. There is very little to not many people know that it's happening, and generally where there is no video camera or there's no footage or there are no other people on Sundays, on off sites where people don't go regularly. So it becomes a little difficult to decide whether such an incident has taken place or not. And this has become a little bit problematic for the women who want to complain, as well as the men who want to protect themselves. So in such cases, having a very clear understanding, I'm sure institutions do have all these, but it's rare that employees or staff or persons who are coming or visiting that space have all of these in their mind. It's very unlikely that there is clear understanding of what is the policy or what is the procedure. Let me give you an example. When we were doing work in the kind of short-lived Me Too movement that was happening in Chennai, one of the instances that came to us repeatedly was of children. What do you do when children are complaining of harassment? Of course, POCSO Act is there, but what do? Do you take every child to the police station and ask them to recount the trauma that took place? So in one case, there was an allegation that a producer of children's programs actually wanted to audition a young girl. And when the mother tried to come into the hall along with the child to audition her, the producer told the mother that she is not required, that that the child has to audition all by herself. After the child comes out, she complained of being sexually harassed or abused in those inside the room for the last 45 minutes or whatever that she spent. The producer, of course, denied it. Now, in this case, it's very easy to say children may be mistaken, or the producer may not have done, or the mother is lying, or many such questions may be raised against the people making the allegation. In such cases, having a standard procedure or guideline is very useful. For instance, whenever we go to a good reputed hospital by ourselves as women, we walk into a hospital and we say we need to be examined. There will always be stationed a woman nurse, a female nurse will be asked to come into the examining room and to be there for the duration of the examination. In fact, and maybe if the doctor is also female, they may not insist. But if the doctor, examining physician, or if any of the examining physicians is male, there definitely has to be a nurse who's a female inside the examination room. And without that, you can't, or you have to bring your own attendant along with you. Now, in many spaces of places of work, like where they have children or where they have women, including the BBC. If you look at the BBC's guidelines for how children should be used in programs and events, which the BBC sponsors, they clearly mention that if the child is to be auditioned, the child has to be accompanied by an adult whom he or she trusts. Now, had there been a procedure like that, had there been a guideline like that, had there been a standard like that, then the mere fact that the producer asked the child to come by herself is enough evidence to show bad intention. If he called the child in and then said to the mother, you stay out, that is enough to prove that there is an intention of sexual harassment and there is an intentional violation of the policy, standard, or guideline. So quite often, some in it is something that we fail to do as women is we probably do not read and understand the guidelines and procedures that are operational in that institution. So it's a bit boring. As a lawyer, I can tell you that it's always very boring to read pages and pages of legal language, and unfortunately there is no other way to express it. One of the reasons why legal language is so difficult to understand is because we try to prevent prevent ambiguity, prevent dual or triple interpretations of the same sentence. So therefore, we write convoluted sentences. But very interestingly, the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Family Welfare have come up with very good handbooks that tell us exactly what our rights are and what the policy standards and guidelines are. Unfortunately, in the home situation, we cannot have such guidelines. By law, even the CEDAW says that just because a woman is married, she does not lose any of her rights. Just because a woman has got into a matrimonial home, she does not lose all her rights. She continues to retain all the individual rights that she has, including the right to say no when she doesn't want to engage in any kind of intimate activity, the right to hold property in her own name, the right to have to meet her friends, to go out, to make money, to have a livelihood or a hobby, to have entertainment. So these are rights that are given to us as individuals because we are human, individuals. Just because we are married, we do not lose these rights. And unfortunately, it happens to many of us. I know there are many women I know who have quit their profession as lawyers, who have quit their profession as engineers because they got married. In fact, statistics are so heavily biased against us that we cannot do much. I happened to visit a couple of IT companies before the pandemic with regard to talk like this, and one statistic stands out commonly in the IT industry, and that is that if you take 100 women into the company, then 90 women will quit in the first 2 years because they're getting married. Of the remaining 10, many will quit in the next 3 years because they have children. Of the remaining, 90% will quit when the child is in 6th standard. And of the remaining, 90% will quit when the child is in 10th standard or 12th standard. So therefore, the few women who remain in core engineering disciplines will actually shift. So there will be hardly any person left in the core engineering discipline who's a woman, who from the original recruitment. Most of them will shift to less stressful areas like project management or finance, or commonly HR. So this also creates within us a difficulty about how much passion and engagement we should have with our career. So it's unfortunate. Many women cannot have work-life balance, and we talk all the time about work-life balance. The primary reason being men have no work-life balance. The men we marry, the men we are associated with, have no work-life balance. Our husbands, our fathers have no work-life balance. And that is the reason why we as women are not able to have work-life balance. So when that push comes to shove, then it's easier to tell a woman, married woman, a mother, to quit her job or her role than to ask a father to quit his job or role. So unfortunately, this is so. This is a structural discrimination. We've talked about legal, gender, now it is social structure discrimination. And it's very difficult to come out of it. The final area where we face constant problems is property. A lot of people are today coming, at least in the last couple of years, who are coming to me to have their living wills written. For those of you who may not know, living will is a document that's called also an advanced health directive. So it's a kind of an agreement that you're making with your future healthcare professional, that at the time when I am so sick that I cannot make health decisions for myself, then these are the decisions I want. For instance, I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want to be intubated, or I don't want to be put in a vegetative state. Or if I am in coma for so many years, please unplug me and let me go. This is the living will that many people are coming to me to write. But interestingly, when it comes to wills, not living wills are being written by couples. I am seeing both the couple, the husband and wife, come to me to have their living wills written. But when it comes to property wills, women hardly come. So it looks like the vast majority of property is being held by men even today. So property related to land, house, jewelry, stocks and shares, whatever is the relevant form of wealth and growth in this economy is held by men. What is held by women? Most women have personal jewelry, which is either gifted to them or given to them. Some women coming from certain matriarchal societies, generally from Kerala, they have some property in their name. And then there are some some gifts and other things which their husband or which has been accumulated by them after their marriage. But looks like the vast majority of women do not control the wealth that they need. So once they're unfortunately, if their husband is no more, or whichever controlling male is no more, then many of these women, even though they may have been used to good lives, also have participated in improving the income of the family, participated in helping the wealth of the family grow, will be dependent on other men. So I personally feel that, and it's there in the Domestic Violence Act provisions in India, that women are entitled to hold on to their financial income. They are entitled to keep their livelihoods to themselves. They are entitled to hold, manage, and improve their economy and wealth, that they have a right to income, that is the family income as well as their personal income. So while, and one of the things that I hear very often from women is that I don't know anything about finance. I don't know anything about banking. Whatever I get, I just give to my father. Whatever I get, I give to my husband. Whatever I get is managed by my husband. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I'm not complaining about husbands and fathers, but I am saying that ignorance is not an excuse. And I am seeing many women struggling after certain unfortunate instances, also unfortunate accidents or health issues, when they are completely dependent on other people. So I would encourage women to look up their rights with regard to wealth and economy, and to hold on to what minimum requirements they have in terms of wealth. Coming quickly down to one question that a lot of people ask. Many women fail to come forward on sexual harassment or even behavior. Let's just leave sexual harassment aside. On behavior which offends them, or which makes them feel bad, because they don't understand. They imagine that they are confused. They ask themselves, they second guess, they ask their families, is this wrong behavior? Did I just face wrong behavior? Or they are quickly they quickly forgive the person who has done this, saying, no, it must be a mistake. It could not have been done by this person. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe I was not paying attention, and things like that. They're quick to excuse the person who has committed the offense against them. And I want to say something that I say to the young children. So what I say is this, that if you're able to, in any relationship, ensure that your personality, your privacy, and your partnership is voluntary. So you have nobody tries to say that any person who tries to say that you are less than who you are, or makes your feel that you have no self-esteem, or breaks down your self-confidence, and thereby affects your personality or your own view of yourself, then that relationship is probably going the wrong way down the road. Privacy. So in youth protection policies that I write, I say that personal space is 18 inches. Honestly speaking, it's an arbitrary number. I don't know whether our personal space is 4 feet or 3 feet or 13 inches or 12 inches. I don't know. But I make sure that whenever our volunteers, adult volunteers, are working with young children, that they maintain a personal space of 18 inches. And this 18 inches is a very good reminder for us as well. So if somebody is very close to you, then you can actually ask yourself, is this person giving me 18 inches of space? If they are not giving you 18 inches of space, they're probably invading your space and making you feel uncomfortable. There is no need for you to second guess yourself. The third is participation, whether your participation in that conversation, in that company, in that joke, in that space, or in that intimate act, or in that friendliness is voluntary or not. If it's not voluntary, if you would rather be somewhere else, if you were feeling uncomfortable and you're unable to leave, like if dirty jokes are being told and I say, okay, let me see you tomorrow, I think I'm out of here now, and somebody is, no, wait, listen to this, then your participation is not voluntary. It may be friendly, it may be done in a fun way, but it's not voluntary. So if these three things or these three elements exist in any interaction that you are having, then it's probably not safe for you to be in that space. In this context, before I close, I would like to share a video that I often share with my students when we are doing work on professional ethics. So I'm going to share that with you, and I'm sure that probably some of you, or at least many of you, would have already heard this sometime. Are you able to see it? Yes?
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, "No thank you," then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea, don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes please, that's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they are unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, "But you wanted tea last week," or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea.
Yep. On that note, I am also ending my talk. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, I'm willing to spend a little more time.
Hi, Swapna, here.
Yes.
That's fine. There are audience online, also a YouTube streaming going on. I have an audience here in the auditorium. Cannot be able to hear. So we pass around the mic. Anybody wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand and pass around the mic. To start with, I just want to ask one question. You talked about policies, guidelines, and how convoluted the legal documents are. I am wondering, you also talked about there's a lot of gray area. Uh, so one example you gave is the hospital scenario. So there needs to be a person when there is an examination, woman, then a doctor, male doctor is examined. But are there similar policies, guidelines down to the detail for institutes like academic institutes and different scenarios in academic institutes, like interaction between student and faculty or student and their co-workers? Is it yet to develop or is it already there, at least in other countries? Do we have examples down to the detail?
So in other countries, certainly, Professor, there are. So there is a big difference in the way other countries look at sexual harassment and certain of these issues. They bring it under what is called equal opportunity. So if you see the equal opportunity policies of these institutes, they are very well drafted indeed. And they are also right down there to the geographical location, to the physical location, to the virtual location, and particularly in the last 2 years, they have very, very clear equal opportunity policies. And many of these equal opportunity policies may also address, joint discrimination, like disabled women or persons who are who are different in their mental capacities and who are also women. So the way these institutes have gone about developing their policies is very inspiring. And one of my friends actually works at the University of Tennessee, and they had discovered that one of the areas of disability that was not being looked at carefully is autism, and a number of researchers and people who are very clever and who are very intelligent also suffer from similar issues, or in their institute also suffered from issues which are similar to those that suffered by the autism spectrum persons. So one of the things they evolved was a very specific set of policies which addressed all of these equal opportunity issues, but also with special emphasis on persons who are autistic or within the spectrum. So the other thing that happens in the US in particular is the Equal Opportunities Commission is a special tribunal set up for discrimination. Of course, women are allowed to go to the police, and women can approach the police for criminal offenses that happen in the course of the harassment. But the harassment itself is treated as a civil offense, as an equal opportunity offense, and compensations are awarded. So what that does is the Equal Opportunity Commission also provides good behavior norms. They also very specifically state what are the behaviors that are acceptable and what are the behaviors that are prohibited. So I am not fully conversant with IIT's policies, but you could definitely check up. I'm sure they have policies, but to what extent they are implemented is something that you need to look up within your institute.
First, so I'm Gayatri, I'm a UG student, and firstly, I'd like to say that I found the session very informative. And so, my first question is about POSH. So, from what I understand, it covers sexual harassment against women in workspaces. So I wanted to understand what options somebody has if they are like either a different gender or a male.
This is a very interesting question. The Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act does not permit transgender persons or male persons from approaching the Internal Complaints Committee. So as far as the act itself is concerned, it is very specific that it's only women who can be an aggrieved person under the act. But the definition of women, many of us also believe, will accommodate transgender people. So people who consider themselves to be women can also be brought under that definition, is how broadly we would view it. But definitely the law does not permit it. No, the law does not specify it. On the other hand, the law does not say that the ICC cannot be opened out to men. So what you could do in an institution is to say that the Internal Complaints Committee will also hear harassment allegations from men, but the provisions of the Sexual Harassment Act cannot apply to it. For instance, Sexual Harassment Act says that the confidentiality of the aggrieved woman will be maintained, that certain aspects like, she can be given leave, there are certain conciliation mechanisms and so on. These cannot be offered to the men. The only thing is that the ICC can probably also receive complaints from men and transgender people. So what is, sorry. So the option for them is to go to the police. Or maybe to the head of the...
Would are there laws that cover for sexual harassment? Or would it just be registered as a complaint of sexual harassment?
In the case of men, in the case of men and transgender, no, it will so the IPC does not actually even consider rape of men as a possibility, or a sexual harassment of men as a possibility, unfortunately. So with the removal of 377 as an offense, that is allowing consensual homosexual acts, what they did say was there was a tacit legal recognition of homosexuality in the country, but there is the offense of rape again, or sexual harassment, obscenity, modesty. All of these words are only applied to women. So the only option is assault, is general injury, trauma, grievous injury, and so on.
So would that mean that's the only jurisdiction that an institute or anybody would have in this?
I didn't get that last bit. Sorry.
In the sense that you mentioned how certain things that are specific to watch, right? About how people can be granted leave, etc. All of that cannot be acted upon, but the only thing that can be done is
they can go. Yes. See, if your institute has a general policy against harassment and bullying, then it applies to everybody. But if it is sexual harassment and it's only for women, then it does not apply or does not protect everybody.
Got it. Okay, I have just one more question. So, so I'm also a UG representative in the Women's Forum, and through that I talk to a lot of students who face many incidents, and overarching reasons for why a lot of them choose to not lodge complaints is one, because they believe that it would be dismissed as a call for attention, or that they may not have enough evidence. It may turn out to be a fake complaint, or also because of political, I don't know, the other parties having more political influence. So, what are the kinds of checks or how support systems or anything that would work against this?
You are asking, if I'm right, I could not hear you very clearly, but you're asking what are the options if the other party is more powerful in political or other ways? Is that what you're asking?
What should somebody in this situation do? Like, what are their options?
Okay, what should they do? So, okay, if you have or if you believe that you have faced an incident of sexual harassment, the first thing for you to do is to document it. Definitely write it down immediately with as much detail as you can. You have to make a note saying that it happened on this date, in this place, and so many people were there, these people were there, and this is exactly what happened. So you need to document that, because the Internal Complaints Committee can only receive a written complaint, and that written complaint has to be given within 3 months. So I understand how difficult it will be for a woman or girl or even a man who undergoes harassment or sexual harassment to immediately sit down and write what is happening to them. So it is a good idea to approach a good friend or even a lawyer that you know and trust to help you write it down. But the most important thing is to document it, because in 3 months you might if you leave it for more than a couple of days, you might forget some crucial information. The next thing you have to do is go to the internal complaints committee, and you have to submit the evidence, submit the complaint, and then whatever possible evidence that you can think of. For instance, you could say that I was in the corridor, so there was a camera there, or I was in the lift and there is a camera there. Or so and so person was standing next to me, and when I came out of this situation, she saw me. So that person, and hopefully that person will come forward to testify on your behalf. A good example of this is what happened very recently in Coimbatore. I think in September, where a woman officer of the Air Force was she had to take some medicines because she had sprained her ankle, and when she woke up, her friend told her that it appears she had been assaulted by a fellow Air Force officer. So because the Air Force officers did not guide her properly, she took a long time to register the complaint, and there was no working internal complaints committee, it seems. But what was interesting was that many people had told her, many senior officials told her, nothing can be done. This is out of your hands. Better not ruin your career. It's not possible that you will get any good outcome out of this, and so on. So the important thing is to remember that the system is working for you, and it's important to remember that you have to take control of the case, or take control of the issue early, and with full confidence. Yeah. So it's true that there are people who are empowered and they are likely to go against you, but generally the courts also, if there is sufficient evidence and if there is reliability on the evidence, then the court will grant what we want, the remedies that we want.
Yeah, Madam, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm working as a deputy registrar here.
Yes, sir.
See, generally, what we know is this is related to the constitution of Committee for the Prevention of Sexual Harassment. Are there any rules and guidelines? Because generally, what we see is that predominantly the members are from the institution, and generally you have one member as from outside. Then there is a possibility of a bias against, even if the complaint is received, predominantly you are from the institute, you try to safeguard the institute, and you have only one external member. Can't it be the other way around? See, you have majority of members from outside and only a few minority from the institution. Are there any such guidelines?
So the law has a special prescription on sexual harassment committees. 1 minute, I'll just open it out for you. You are quite right that there is a possibility of bias if the institution if the committee is fully constituted of members from that institution. So this is what it is. So the internal complaints committee shall comprise the following members: a presiding officer, who shall be a woman employed at a senior level at the workplace. So she will be an employee. Provided in case the senior officer is not available in that place, then from some other branch of the same institution. Not less than 2 members from amongst employees, preferably committed to the cause of women. So even if it is women employees whom you are picking up, then I mean, even if you're picking up employees, they have to be committed to the cause of women. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry about that. So they have to be committed to the cause of women, or who have experience in social work or legal knowledge. So even if they are employees, they should be persons who care about women's rights and the rights of other people. 1 member from among the non-governmental organizations, so an NGO, which is familiar with the issues related to sexual harassment, and 1/2 of the total members have to be women. The presiding officer and every member of the internal committee shall hold office for not exceeding 3 years. So this is one safeguard. So if they are there for more than 3 years, then they tend to have a stronger pro-institute bias. And the member appointed from among the non-governmental organization shall be paid fees, etc. So if you ask me, it's very clear that you have to have 3 to 4 members from the institute. It doesn't strictly say that a majority of the members should be from the institute, except for the presiding officer. It says at least 1 member from the NGO. So from an NGO, you can always have 3 members, or at least 1 member who is from the legal side. Then you can, an employee who has legal or other background, you can take more than 1 member, and so on. So the constitution of the Internal Complaints Committee definitely is a very crucial aspect of the Sexual Harassment Act, and it is very. I am the chairperson of the Apollo Biomedical Research Ethics Committee, and also member of several ethics committees. One thing that we realize is when we are appointed, we are being appointed by the institute. And, we do have to abide by the SOPs, which the institute has drafted. But once we are in that committee, once we have become part of that committee, or we are heading that committee, we are a statutory authority. We are no longer an institutional body. We are a statutory authority, which means that our power does not come from the institute. The institute only has the power to appoint us. But once we are appointed, our powers come directly from the law. Therefore, it is important to empower and inform the ICC members whom we are appointing that we may be the appointing authority, but you are not governed by us. You have to act independently, and you have to take your power from the constitution or from the law. And thereafter, we have to keep providing them input and awareness to ensure that they also operate in an unbiased way. In fact, in a training that we did for the ICC members of the Southern Railways, we noticed that there was a clear difference between how the women ICC officials treated sexual harassment and the men ICC officials treated sexual harassment. Not that they did not recognize sexual harassment, but we felt that the male employees or male ICC members were more likely to say, no, this is, a mistake. It won't happen again. We can believe their undertaking. Whereas the women were less likely to forgive such offenses. So we tried to bring them all on the same balanced outlook as well.
Yeah.
And this is what the law says. Beyond this, you can not go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? I don't see any questions in the chat box also. I have put up one, I think it's IIT Delhi's guidelines for students. So similar guidelines must exist for other IITs as well. I would say familiarize yourself with it. If you feel that there needs to be improvement, you could do it.
Dr. Swapna, Ms.
Yes.
Swapna Sundar, thank you so much for the talk. Indu ma'am, do you want to mention anything? Because there are a couple of questions that we had received in the response form. I know we're running out of time. I know you're also really busy. It's just that I'm picking up one question, which is extremely interesting according to me. And I think which is something that a lot of people may want to know. The question is, how are social media companies addressing online harassment or bullying on their platforms? What are the rights of these victims? I think this is a very crucial question in the times of social media.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm just looking at the particular law, the 26 words that created the internet. Are you aware of that? There is a book called The 26 Words That Created the Internet. So the US law, okay, and we have to talk about US law because the US is the place where many of our social media companies come from. So the 26 words come from their law that no provider or user of any, and I'm reading from that particular section, No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Are you able to understand? So no carrier, so no platform like Facebook or WhatsApp can be held responsible for any content that is published on the platform by any other user. So this is one of the crucial ways in which the social media platforms evolved in the US. They are not responsible for what is published on their content. So on their platform. So while in India, we are trying through the IT Act to say that the new amendments to the IT Act to say that platforms that have more than a certain number of users should take note of who are the bigger users and should also have certain obligations towards modesty of women and protecting women from cyber crimes, and also, of course, certain national security issues that they are talking about. That said, the international platforms do not owe us any protection at all. Point one. Point two, because they are at the end of the day marketed to us, and if they openly say I am not responsible for what happens to you on my platform, then we won't go on the platform. Therefore, they have come up with certain internal policies. Their own internal bullying policies are what we click on when we click I agree. These are called click wrap or click wrap agreements, which are derived from the shrink wrap agreements. So essentially, we don't even read the 3 pages that go in fine print when we click. If you read those carefully, they will tell you what rights the platform is offering you. And the simple 3 rights that they offer you is that you can make a complaint. On the basis of your complaint, they will pull down the content of the other person, whoever the user is. If the user objects and they clarify that the content was not meant to do XYZ, then they will put it back. But if the user, and according to their own harassment and bullying policies, is continuously harassing, bullying, using racist or ethnic or other epithets, then those will be taken note of under their own policies. No law, under their own policies, and they may ban the user for a period. Generally, the period is a day, 24 hours, or generally 90 days. But I haven't heard of any person being permanently banned. I'm not sure from any platform there, but there might be. So quite often it is only on the basis of what they want to offer, what protection they want to offer. We have no right other than to file complaints. But we can file a complaint on the person who is committing these crimes. That they will also support. Suppose we file a cyber crime complaint in the local cybercrime unit saying that this is the person who is doing all this, and we write to Google. Google will support. They will send us archive data. They will send us data on what has happened. The police can also ask Google or ask WhatsApp or ask any of the platforms to give up the data. So many of the platforms, unfortunately, like WhatsApp, if it is encrypted, we won't get the data itself, the content itself. But the fact that they have sent you so many messages will be given. So all this is possible, but only through the mechanism of the law. Directly, the social media platform may only do those 3 things. You can complain, they will take down, but if the other party explains their position and they're satisfied with it, then the content will come back.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think that's very helpful.
So if you're facing, just as an input, if you people are facing cybercrime online, please take screenshots and then date it and put it in a pen drive and keep it, because tomorrow if you're filing a complaint and that person has taken down his the photograph or whatever is offending you, then it might take 3 months for you to get the data from Google. But if you have it ready with the date on a separate pen drive or flash drive, then you can always use that as evidence.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indumati ma'am, over to you.
There's a quick question from Sharda is going to.
Maybe one more question. Sure.
One more question. Harassment is one thing, sexual harassment. everyone is focusing. What about the other? I know you are one. How can you do that?
No. I didn't.
You by
Can you please tell me, did you ask if harassment is only sexual harassment and no other types of harassment? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, but
Okay.
nobody is focusing on that. Nobody knows even that. Other than that, people are simply harassing us by saying that you are a woman. How can
So harassment by itself, without the sexual or gender component of it, is dealt with in the case of in academic institutions under the Ragging Act, Anti-Ragging Act, and also under IPC. So if you are your language or your behavior is rude or discriminatory, you can bring it under the Indian Penal Code. It's quite right. What you're saying is quite right.
in
Bullying and
workplace, yeah, in workplace, the junior, senior.
sorry.
In the workplace,
Yes.
everybody. In the workplace, if you are degraded by a man, do they have any position for it?
So most of the workplace harassment is also dealt with under in disciplinary committees of the department or of the institute. So if you have a complaint which has less to do with sexual harassment and more to do with other kinds of harassment and discrimination, including say disability discrimination, you have to go before the disciplinary committee in your institute. The institute will have a disciplinary committee which has nothing to do with sexual harassment. So you can go before them, and of course you can always approach the law. But IPC is only for criminal offenses. It does not operate in terms of other offenses. Then there are what I mean to say is specific forms of harassment in India, unfortunately, because we don't have an equal opportunity commission. All of the equal opportunity issues don't come into one law or one tribunal. They go to different places. So if you're discriminated on the basis of caste, you would have to go before the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. If it is physical harassment or oral abuse and so on, then you have to go under either defamation law, defamation or libel, or criminal offenses under IPC. If it is bullying between peers in the college, then it comes under the Ragging Act or Anti-Ragging Act. If it is between employees or between different staff members, it will go to the disciplinary committee of the institute, and so on. This is how it is. I hope it was useful and I enjoyed the interaction. Thank you very much.